Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for this live event. Today's event is titled Ontario's Critical Minerals, Paving the Future with Provincial Support. We are joined by the Honourable Minister George Pirie alongside three mining CEOs with critical mineral projects within Ontario. We have President and CEO of Generation Mining, Jamie Levy, CEO of Canada Nickel, Mr. Mark Selby, and President and CEO of Frontier Lithium, Mr. Trevor Walker. Now just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First, this event is being recorded and the replay will be available after the discussion on our YouTube channel. Second, there is a live this is a live event and it will be an interactive event. We do want you to submit questions in the chat in the bottom right corner of your screen at any point during the conversation. However, as the moderator, I will only bring questions to the panelists that are on topic. If you have any company-specific questions, my team will be sure to pass them along to the respected companies for them to reach out to you directly. With all that out of the way, gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. So let's talk about Ontario's critical mineral strategy. Minister Pirie, we will start with you. Are all critical minerals created equal, and what role does the province play in rolling out the critical mineral strategy?
Well, good morning, gentlemen. I'm glad to see everybody here attending this panel discussion. And Kyle, that's an interesting question, isn't it? When are critical minerals created equal? Well, quite frankly, from our point of view in the ministry, we're agnostic in relation to that list of critical minerals. We've got a critical mineral strategy that we invested $55 million into to promote in the development of all critical minerals, whether they're equal or not. Essentially, if you use price as a metric, it's the markets that will decide who is more equal or less equal, and that's probably decided on supply and demand and the market forces. But from Ontario's point of view, we're agnostic. That's why we've got the full list of critical minerals that are there. They're all essential to the battery technology, the electronic vehicle revolution that's taking place right now. They're all essential. And rare earths, of course. I mean, so we've invested in rare earths. We've invested in nickel. We've invested in lithium. So across the range of minerals that are defined as critical in our strategy. You're all well aware that we've got the junior exploration program that I think we've invested over $55 million already into that program. We've got the innovation fund. That is about $20 million that we put money into. So yeah, we're that's the government. The government doesn't build the mines, but we set the table to ensure that those minerals will be developed and hopefully secure a better future for all of Ontario, for all communities, Indigenous communities, and all communities in Northern Ontario and Southern Ontario. As you know, we've got what the world needs from a critical minerals point of view, and obviously it's our goal within the province to secure the supply chain, matching the mineral endowment of Northern Ontario and other parts of Ontario with the manufacturing might in Southern Ontario. I think the province has done an exceptional job in attracting these investments into Ontario, and I think the figure is in excess of $40 billion. And our job here, my job as the Minister of Mines, is to ensure that, in fact, that these critical minerals that I could point to the map behind me that show where they are, get developed in our usual fashion, which is ethically and responsibly and sustainably. So yeah, that's Ontario's role to play in the critical mineral strategy.
Thank you for the thorough answer and for laying the foundation for the conversation. Mark, I'll pass it over to you regarding nickel as a critical mineral. And the question is, are all critical minerals created equal? I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I think, the key thing, minerals are critical in two dimensions. One, in terms of the requirement for the energy transition and supporting the EV supply chain. There's also, a broader security of supply issue, as so much of the periodic table now is effectively controlled in large part by China. And so I would say, in terms of the energy transition, obviously there are the ones that go in the batteries, and that, if we want to support that effort, then we should be focused on those minerals that go in the battery, which include nickel. On the second piece, again, there's a broad issue, and literally there are dozens of elements in the periodic table, where China is the sole or dominant supplier of today. And we saw just a few weeks ago with antimony, China limiting the exports of that particular mineral. And so in that case, anything that's on that periodic table, we should be encouraging, exploration of, development of, and eventually get into production of those elements. And again, Ontario is, extremely well positioned to be able, to deliver a bunch of those different projects.
Certainly. And Trevor, do you have any commentary on lithium?
I think one thing is, how strategically important it is. Lithium, cobalt, nickel, they're crucial really for EV batteries. So, it's really been a highlight for the province with regards to the whole strategy. So, lithium, to touch upon both the minister and Mark's points, its processing is really controlled out of East Asia. So, as a result, we've seen, lots of great support from government with regards to really trying to get decoupled from Chinese supply. So, from our standpoint, it's strategic importance ranks really high.
Amy, Generation 9 has a few critical minerals at the Marathon project, if I'm not mistaken. So feel free to address this question as you see fit.
Thank you, Kyle. It's always nice to back clean up here. Never get to do that very often. So thanks for putting me forth here. So I think Mark touched on the subject, which is important to me, is the difference between critical metals and battery metals. And there's a subset of battery metals that go in the battery electric vehicle, and obviously all the critical metals, which I think the federal government and the province has about 31 of them. So within the battery metals, we would be producing some copper, which would make up around 40% of our revenue, and then the other 45% or so would be the PGM market, which are a critical metal as well. So interesting to have those two different subsets. Critical metals such as PGMs are mostly produced out of Norilsk, out of Russia. So as to Mark's point, to secure that supply is extremely important with some of the issues happening over in Russia and Ukraine right now.
Thank you. I'm just going to do one more housekeeping item here. I'm getting a little bit of reverb. So if you're not speaking, if you could just do me the favor of muting yourself, just for the audience sake. But thank you very much. But circling back to you, Minister Pirie, how does Ontario compare to other global jurisdictions when it comes to development and supporting critical minerals projects? Are there any areas where Ontario's leading or fallen behind?
Yeah, Kyle, I'll address that question, but I want to go back to one thing Mark said, probably far more eloquently than I'm about to, but the difference are in relation to equality. It largely resides from the point of view from the U.S. lens. We know the lens is in Canada. It's all about transforming the economy, getting off of fossil fuels, and developing the electric revolution in Canada, and climate change, which are all very, very urgent issues. From the U.S., the number one thing that they're concerned about is national security. And the metals that, in fact, and Trevor's mentioned it, and Jamie and Mark, in a roundabout way, the metals that are actually controlled or financed by Russia and China, or in fact come from countries like Congo, is their number one objective or concern in relation to critical minerals. obviously we don't want the nickel from Indonesia. It's powered by coal, it's financed by the Chinese, and the tailings goes directly to the ocean. Ontario's model, of course, is far superior than that, and where the nickel comes from in Ontario is irrelevant from the Ministries' point of view. The rare earths, as you know, are controlled by China, and we have the rare earths in Northern Ontario. So how you answer that question is directly related to basically it's a jurisdictional issue. Canada would answer that question different from the U.S. But that's why I've earlier on in the spring I traveled to Washington with and Mark was there as well, and I'll be in Washington in Wednesday and Thursday again to ensure that it's understood that Northern Ontario and Ontario specifically is the partner of choice for the U.S. in developing and perhaps even financing these projects here in Northern Ontario. In relation to your question, I quite frankly don't think we're behind in any aspect of what we're doing from the critical minerals. Ontario has been for the last 2 years the #1 jurisdiction for exploration in Canada in Ontario. So we're obviously doing something to attract the money into these and finances into these projects. We have a very robust exploration industry right now, and we're coupling that again with the innovation fund that's doing some very innovative work in establishing increasing recoveries and again, Canada Nickel was a recipient of that funding in relation to the technology required to ensure that any CO2 that's produced in developing the hydrogen technology can be sequestered in serpentine. Trevor has received financing and in relation to the work that's being done in the pilot project on lithium hydroxide plants, and so yeah, we are. I don't think we're lagging in any effort from the point of view of exploration or innovation or support for the projects that are involved with critical minerals.
Thank you, Minister Pirie. I'm actually going to stay on with you there's some questions in the chat, and you mentioned that the province has no trouble with people financing the projects, and that's true. But this individual in the chat is wondering if the provincial or federal government will be investing directly into some of these Ontario projects.
Well, it's interesting. Let's talk about the bridge across the Burns River. That's a project that is financed by the province and the federal government. That's a project that's critical to develop in developing the lithium deposits in the northwestern Ontario, which, quite frankly, are world class. Frontier Lithium is perhaps the best hard rock lithium deposit that we have in North America. So yeah, our investment typically is usually directed through infrastructure projects that will help the industry to develop the specific asset that is in question. The Innovation Fund again has we've invested directly into research projects and companies in Oakville and Peterborough and other places as well, to ensure that the technology that's required to develop these minerals is in place.
Thank you for that. I'm going to open it up to the group. We're phrasing it a little differently for the CEOs on the panel today, but whoever wants to jump in first, please feel free to, regarding operating in Ontario, and perhaps if you have experience from other jurisdictions, be it Canada or not, if you want to draw on them as a comparison, but your overall experience operating in Ontario. But I'll leave the floor open for whoever wants to kick it off.
I'm happy to jump in here. Firstly, just to add on to some of the minister's comments, I think Ontario in general, it's just super rich history in mining and processing, robust environmental laws, whether it's water quality, dust, noise, aquatic life, second to none to any jurisdiction in the world. One thing just to highlight that the minister touched upon with regards to the Barron's Bridge or building access. Really great vision and leadership from the province. We just need to highlight, this is a great jurisdiction that respects Indigenous people. There's strong consideration for archaeology, traditional knowledge. And so huge opportunities exist as well for potential in the future for resource revenue sharing. And, just taking the opportunities, understanding the connections, harnessing the strategy to put it into action to create partnerships. This is really about people. This is about Ontarians, Canadians. Ontario has done a great job in recognizing the opportunity, moving very swiftly, and again, creating support and investments, beyond research and innovation, but tying it into the north, boots on the ground, opening up access into the far north. So these things take time. But we couldn't be more pleased with the support that we've received from the minister and from the government in general.
So, Mark, you want to go, or I'll go? To add on to what Minister Pirie was mentioning about Ontario, they have been very supportive, through the CMIF, some of the exploration credits that are out there. The federal government has, I believe, about just under $4 billion between the Strategic Innovation Fund to help out with downstream. The Canadian Infrastructure Bank has about half that amount as part of the budget from a couple of years ago. Then I think there's another growth fund or mining fund that Freeland is running. I don't know if they've deployed any money. I think it was upwards of $5 billion. So there is some support from the federal government as well. The provincial government, I believe, they would probably be able to come on at some point on a bespoke model or a one-off model as well, kind of like what Trevor is happening with his project right now. And, I'm a firm believer of, Mark and I were up in Timmins last night a couple of weeks ago with Minister Pirie and Mr. Piccini. And I can't even say the other guy's name. The guy from Niagara, Associate Minister of Energy. Sorry, and it was very good to hear their interest in mining, the job creation that is going to happen, direct and indirect jobs, the tax revenue that the province is going to get. So I'm a firm believer that the province, and it's probably not Minister Pirie's department, but it'll come from the Prime Minister, the Premier's office, or the Minister. The finance minister, or Fideli has a bunch of money as well that he's able to deploy more in the Infrastructure Ontario Fund. And then there's Minister Rickford also has some other funds. So there's a bunch of funding that's out there direct into the project. Probably not, but maybe they could help out on some other forms of grants or loans to mining companies like ourselves that are on the call here.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't. I said about setting the table, but yes, the province, especially with Minister Fideli's ministry, is quite. In fact, they have invested directly into different projects.
Yeah, and just a couple points to add. Agree with all the comments that were made. I think number one, we've taken our project from fifth drill hole in just over 5 years to feasibility study complete. We'll be shortly finishing the second phase of the federal permitting process. We expect to have all our permits in place by this time next year, so just over 6 years. And a critical part of making that happen is being in a place like Ontario and the support that this government has made. One of the first things when Minister Pirie got in was basically changing the legislation, which in a lot of cases hadn't been touched in quite a while, and actually made a significant number of improvements in terms of not getting rid of things, but just streamlining, to make sure that they're just asking all the right questions and not a pile of unnecessary ones, so that we can advance these projects. as quickly as possible. And then in terms of money, we were quite fortunate the last 2 weeks. We announced that Export Development Canada was providing up to $500 million US dollars in funding support as part of an overall and leading the overall debt package for the project. And then another financing institution is going to provide 500 million Canadian dollars. So, that's almost $1 billion US in terms of funding, that the federal government stepped up. And again, so, the governments are deploying capital in this space, and I would encourage investors to keep an eye on it. And I think, in 12 months from now, there'll be a lot of good stories that, I think people will wake up to the fact that most of our companies here are trading at a discount to the free money that's attached to our project, never mind, the actual resource in the project that we've got as well. So.
And can I just finish off, Kyle? Sorry, just going back to Minister Pirie. I don't know how long you've been on this job for, 2-3 years now. Since that time, I've seen Minister Pirie probably too many times, maybe 10 times. He has roundtables every 3 months. When they updated the Mining Act, when they've updated this, he's asking for CEO executive support, whether it's during PDAC where he brings in Premier Ford, or all these other times we've had different meetings all the time. And he's asking, Trevor, Mark, myself, and, numerous other mining execs, what can the province do? And they are listening. So I give them a lot of credit for the help that they're doing, whether it's on the permitting or the financing side, but they are here, they are listening. Things take time to develop, but they are doing a lot of good things for mining in Ontario.
Yeah, 100% echo that sentiment. Yeah, it's been tremendous.
Thank you for those closing remarks. Minister Pirie, I'm going to address the question to you. So there's a question in the chat which ties nicely to Jamie's remarks there. I'm just going to read it verbatim here from Gord. Minister Pirie, even though not all items for development are under mining ministry control, what is being done to collaborate with other ministries such as environment, transportation, etc., to keep obstacles to a minimum? Obviously, you have clear communication with the companies and they're expressing their gratitude, but what about within the government?
No, Kyle, I've been in the ministry for 2 years, and the question is a good question. Thank you very much. Yes, there's always more work to do. The one project, one license, if you want to call it, or one project, one permit. That of course is the emphasis there is to eliminate the silos that naturally exist across ministries. We've got a exceptional group of ministers for us and with our government, and it's a number one focus that we all have to ensure that everything these projects get permitted faster, and again without the redundant nature of some of the activities that are carried out right now. And this is even a question, of course, or a remark that the Indigenous people have said. Well, why do we have relatively the same questions 4 or 5 different times on the same project on the same issues? Yes, we've got that's one of the areas that we're working hard on right now, and hopefully we'll have some good news in the near term. But notwithstanding that, we have we're working exceptionally well with the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs and Economic Reconciliation. They're the lead on the roads. Everybody's focused on the same thing, and everybody realizes there's always a better way to do it without sacrificing any of Ontario's world-class environmental standards and or the duty to consult. So yeah, we are actually focused. There is a sense of urgency to get this done. Nobody is sitting back and waiting for us on their laurels. Yeah, we'll always have a lot of work to do to make ourselves better.
I'll open it up to the group based off your comments there regarding local communities. I'm just wondering, what are you hearing from local communities where mining projects are active or planned regarding critical minerals? Open to anyone.
From the Indigenous or non-Indigenous communities that are supportive, which the majority are, or all of them are supportive in our project, the one question they get is, when will it start? And why does it take so long? So a lot of this is, technical work. Again, I'm not blaming the province or the federal government on that. There's a lot of work that our consultants or our employees, whether it's Stantec or Northern Bioscience or WSP, a lot of technical stuff. We want to make sure we get it right. Mining is important, health and safety. We don't want any environmental disasters. So we're going to make sure that we check all the boxes. We're not going to speed through any sort of permits. We want to make sure that we get the right consultation with the First Nation, their approval, work with them for their understanding, and to go jump ahead. We just got at the end of 2022 November, we received our EA environmental assessment. There was a Crown consultation team, which was joint between the province and the federal government. I think it went very, very extremely excellently well. If I could say that, I was very, very happy with that. The ground consultation team, and then the environmental assessment process, which was led by IAC, which is the Impact Agency of Canada. We had a good friend over there, Terry Hubbard. He was the president of IAC. He really helped making this project a priority, working with Minister Piccini, MECP, along with Kathleen O'Neill. There's a bunch of people I can mention, give a shout outs, but they did a very, very good job making sure we got our EA complete, and then now we're going through our federal and provincial permits. For a federal permit, we still have a couple Ontario provincial permits to get, but needless to say is when there's some cooperation between the federal and the Ontario government, it goes a long way, and we had that on our project. So I'm very happy with that. It took a long time to get there, but once we got there, and the priority that the federal and the provincial government has for critical metals projects, it was certainly a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, and to build on Jamie's comments there, again, part of the reason we went quickly is because Ontario is such a good jurisdiction, but even more importantly, being in the Timmins region, these are communities that understand the benefits of mining. The First Nations communities in that area, again, are familiar with the cost benefit of having these mining operations in the area, and so. If you're a mining company and you approach, start from the very beginning with the approach that, you're only going to do things in those communities, both First Nation and non-First Nation, if you've got the informed and consent of those communities, to do what you want to do and ultimately want what you want to do with those projects. And so, again, I can't echo enough just what a great place Timmins is to be able to get stuff done. And then two, because there's so much mining activity in the area, there's a huge depth of resources to do pretty much anything you need to do with the mining project that's available locally. So you'll find that in very, very few places around the world. And again, Timmins in Ontario is a great place to build a mining project.
We're really fortunate with a little less complexity balancing both levels of government. We have no triggers on the project for federal EA. But, with regards to communities on the ground, we've seen really good support in our project area. We continue to work really hard with the communities on engagement and really providing facts around the project. We're at the early steps of permitting process. What's really important when you are working in the tip of the far north is to dispel, misconceptions. There's a little less capacity in the northern regions, the northern communities. So really, getting the facts straight, making sure that you're dealing with truths around projects, having, support from the Ontario government is key on really getting northern communities up the curve. So, we've seen government support with programs to really help in the education and understanding for communities in close proximity. So, overall, I think critical mineral projects, if done correctly, are seen really favorably by Indigenous communities that are sustainably focused. So there's direct alignments between core values in Indigenous culture and the critical minerals that are required for, circular economy, lowering carbon footprint, all the things that the government is leading the charge and working closely with ourselves on making sure we get this right. And ultimately, what's that old saying? If you can't farm it, can't grow it, you got to mine it. That's just the reality, and communities are understanding that we've got to strengthen and build economies for opportunities for these northern communities. So so we're really appreciative. Truth and reconciliation. What's really important is dealing with the facts. So we're seeing tons of support from the province on that front.
Thank you, everyone, for your responses. Elijah mentioned a question in the chat. I think I can extract some value from this here. It's posed to Minister Pirie regarding the cyclicality of the commodity sector and how many of these critical minerals are experiencing low commodity prices, and if there's any pause in the government in terms of moving along with these programs. You mentioned infrastructure prior, but I'll leave it open to you to start this conversation about the low in the commodities.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, we're seeing what's happening with nickel, based on I would suggest excess supply being distributed into North America. I'll phrase it that way. The issue, you've seen tariffs, of course, with the federal government, both in the U.S. and Canada, where they've imposed tariffs not only on electric vehicles coming out of China, but also on the commodities that are required to support them. We are in a incredible position right now, and a time in our history where, in fact, the demands for those commodities will be in unprecedented demand, and in certainly in Canada and other jurisdictions, and also including the U.S. We have a requirement to double our grid to meet these needs, and the U.S. needs 10 times the energy. So I think it would be a little unwise to think about these these commodities from the viewpoint that they're in a prolonged slump. That certainly isn't my opinion, and the fact that the province has invested, I said, $45 billion to transform to move off of fossil fuels into critical minerals, bodes well for certainly Ontario's economy. So the pricing situation in critical minerals is also complicated by the fact that a lot of those commodities are not traded in the LME. However, they are commodities that are controlled by the Chinese or financed by the Chinese. So that as that pendulum swings, you'll see the prices reflect, and the value of the commodities, that the long-term value in the commodities that are in the ground. As I said, from Ontario's point of view, we need every single pound of nickel to be developed, whether it's in northwestern Ontario or northeastern Quebec or northeastern Ontario. Every single pound of nickel. I mean, Canada Nickel is, at this next round of drilling, will have the world's largest resource of undeveloped nickel, and that'll all be required to meet the needs of the needs of as seen through the Canadian lens, and as well as the U.S. lens about national security. I think we're very, very well positioned in this market. No one's on no one's on this panel, of course, that has a gold project, but that's why gold right now, I haven't checked it in about a week, but a few weeks ago it was $3,250 an ounce Canadian. And that reflects the geopolitical situation, the real geopolitical situation that we're talking about here. And when in fact perhaps the investor realizes how that plays out in relation to critical minerals, that'll take a little bit of the angst about the current pricing.
Thank you. Before I pass to the CEOs for this question, price of gold closer to 3,500 now Canadian. But in terms of the financing question, I do want to add on with a question from the chat just to remind people, what are the timelines for each of the mines to get into production on the call? Trevor, it looks like you wanted to go first, so I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, just to add on to the minister's comments from a lithium perspective, it's a well-known fact that the Chinese government's been subsidizing lithium supply from some high-cost sources in China, mineral species called lepidolite. It's it's low grade. It's there's lots of byproducts, lots of nasty byproducts. Very expensive to process. While they've done that and flooded the market, the Chinese have really gotten control over many resources, in particular in Africa and South America. So that has posed as a challenge. But we've seen at the same time over $45 billion of commitment from OEMs for production of critical components of battery, the electric vehicle battery itself, lithium ion, of course, and electric vehicles. So what's really important is identifying where there's market failures. Really difficult for governments, to echo minister's comments in his opening. Really tough for government to pick horses, but the Ontario government's done a tremendous job in realizing the opportunities to set the table, recognize where there's market failures, and support investment to really that enables the decoupling off of the Chinese supply chain. So the difficulty is the equity markets for companies such as ourselves have really sat by and been idle. This is a new dawn of support we're now seeing in North America. We're seeing the ecosystem being built downstream to now investments start to take place upstream. So it's going to be really interesting. We're really proud Ontarians here to see where there's market failure, to see public support come in. These are not projects that are not economic. These are projects that are dealing with market failures that the government, including the minister here, has identified, and they've got boots on the ground and doing something about it. So just wanted to add, that lithium lens to the earlier comments.
Mark or Jamie, do you want to take the floor?
Sure. In terms of timeline, we expect to have permits by mid next year, break ground shortly thereafter, and look to have a 30-month construction period and targeting, first material through the mill by the end of 2027. We're also looking to build downstream processing plants. There's more of even a bigger gap in the nickel space in terms of those types of facilities. And we're looking to have those facilities basically get built. Hopefully the nickel plant gets even built beforehand, starts processing other people's feed, and then followed by the stainless alloy plant. And expect that plant to start up in line with the mining project as well.
And I know Minister Peri was mentioning Mark's nickel project in Timmins, but there's some other commodities out there as well that generation will be producing, and it is copper. We'd be producing over 20,000 tons or 40 million pounds a year. Copper is critical. It is a battery metal. It is going into a shortage. and it is needed in the short time. So we're glad we're close to that shovel-ready decision. PGMs, which we're producing, almost over 200,000 ounces of PGMs between palladium and platinum. The majority of that is produced over in South Africa and Russia. As mentioned earlier, there are some issues with the Russian supply. As you were asking about some of the funny business that might be happening on the spot market, whether there's a large short position in palladium right now, whether it's the Chinese shorting it because they know Norilsk will need to sell that PGMs. I don't know, but what kind of stuff happens, but we don't look at the daily quotes as much as I look at Kitco in the middle of the night to see what the commodities are trading at. We're not in production now, so it's not a big deal, but we know in the future that these are all commodities that are needed. And, we're right on the power line, which is nuclear, clean, carbon free. And I think there could be a demand in the future, hopefully by the OEMs, that they want to get from a tier 1 jurisdiction like Ontario, Canada, with clean power, checking all the right boxes for their ESG funds that are out there. So we're hopeful that there will be a premium to Ontario critical metals or Canadian critical metals versus what's happening, as Minister Pirie said, in Indonesia, where they're just dumping the tailings right into the ocean, or the Norilsk, which is a huge environmental disaster there and going to probably get worse over the timing. So just to add on to that original question from the chat room, for us, generation time permits, we still have 3 permits left. 2 of them are not with Minister Pirie's department, with Minister of Energy and Conservation and Parks, permit to take water and a permit, an ECA water. And then we have our Lakes and Improvement, which is our LERA permit, which is done through MNRF. And we're aiming to get all those permits and hopeful that we'll get them in the next couple months. So call it by the end of fall, beginning of winter, we'll be fully permitted. We've already received our 2 permits, our 2 final permits from the federal government, our DFO fisheries offset, which is a huge obstacle to get. And even more important is we got our Schedule 2 approval from the federal government as well. So now we're dealing with the province on that. And I think that we should be getting them in the next couple of months, and looking forward to having that fully permitted project and looking to get the final project financing arranged so we could begin construction soon thereafter.
I've got to be careful here with providing new guidance. The minister mentioned, strategic investment in key infrastructure to bridge into the Treaty 5 region of northwestern Ontario. It's in the heart of that region lies the PAC Lithium project. Failed to mention about 4 months ago, really critical power has been also brought into the region, funded both by the provincial and federal government. These are the first steps of bringing infrastructure into the region. So we're seeing just massive government support for not only our Indigenous partners, but obviously creating those opportunities for the project. So I've got to be careful. What's important here right now is bringing lithium chemicals in tier 1 jurisdiction from a tier 1 project to market by the end of this decade. So that's very clear on what we need to get accomplished. I alluded earlier to the beginning steps of the permitting process, and with that goes hand in hand on closure plans and working towards collaboration agreements to cover construction and operations with Indigenous communities. So we have a lot to do. We have a lot going on. We've got a tier 1 management team and leadership with great support again from the government on these steps that we have to take. But by the end of the decade, we've got to deliver chemicals. It's very clear to us. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you.
The next question I'm going to direct toward you, Minister Pirie. It's actually Bud's question in the chat. I'm just going to read it verbatim here. With both levels of government investing in these projects, will they realize profits when these companies become profitable other than taxes? So the question is, what is the economic benefit of putting an emphasis on these critical mineral projects?
Go down there, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, Kyle. I was trying to get myself unmuted.
No worries.
And I want to expand first on a point that Jamie mentioned about copper. He's right. It is a critical mineral. And I travel over Ontario. I go to really every place there's a mine, obviously including Kid Creek. Every time that I bring a minister into Timmins, I bring him into Kid Creek. Right now, it's 10,200 feet deep. It's still fantastic. If anybody checks my site, my social media site, you'll see me standing in front of the face in Kid Creek. It's the ore lens at that particular. We came back about to 9,800 feet. Look, it's 40 meters wide and it's 120 meters long. It's a tremendously complex, technical project, and it's incredibly rich. I mean, it's already produced 150 million tons of polymetallic material, so it's truly a world-class deposit. They're still mining about 1 million tons a year, 3,000 tons a day. Its life, because of the technical challenges, not because it's run out of ore, will probably be over by the end of 2026, and that pains me. But it's certainly, when Jamie talks about copper being a critical mineral, that they'll lose that production. I wish we could say we could that Glencore could develop that project or exploit that project to 12,000 feet, and let's hope they can. But to Jamie's point about copper, yeah, copper is a very scarce resource. A number of world-class deposits over the years have been depleted. So yeah, we don't want to lose sight of copper for sure. And Mark, what was your question as I was struggling with the mute button?
I was asking Bud's question from the chat regarding critical minerals, the economic importance of it. Besides taxes, how does the government benefit from it?
Well, obviously the benefit is to, we talk about benefit to the governments. Well, in fact, every time a community that benefits from the development of critical minerals or any minerals, there's an incredible benefit for the government, municipal, provincially, and federally, and Indigenous communities. The employment, the service. I think there's 77,000 employees right now in the mining sector. I think there's 40,000 employees that are employed in the service sector. So all of those individuals, of course, they contribute to the economy. They support all of the needs, whether it's housing and schools and hospitals, and they obviously like to enjoy the lifestyle that employment in these industries provides. And that can be, boats and motors or skidoos or recreational lifestyle that everybody enjoys in Northern Ontario. So the benefits are also there from the point of view of the balance of payments. I mean, obviously, the extraction of minerals supports the Canadian currency, and all metals, and obviously in gold as well. There's benefits from the financial sector, as I said, about the point of view that the supporting the currency, right down to the Indigenous communities that see the benefit of building their own homes. So it's right from A to Z the benefits of the development of these projects in Ontario, and especially Northern Ontario.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, gentlemen, for the discussion. I know we have everyone has a busy schedule, so I'm going to just give the last few minutes here for you an opportunity to talk about the upcoming catalyst, what people should look forward to for your company in the last quarter of 2024 and the years ahead. Mark, perhaps we'll start with you.
Sure. In the next few weeks here, we'll start filing our environmental impact statement, which will allow us to complete the second phase of the federal permitting process by the end of October. We're working with Scotia and Deutsche Bank to put together the balance of the project financing that we need on the equity side. We continue to work and again make great strides the last few weeks in terms of the overall debt financing package. As Minister Pirie alluded to, we've got 7 drill rigs turning right now, thanks to investment backed by Agnico Eagle. And over the next by next spring, we expect to publish 6 additional resources to the 2 that we have, and by that point, we should have an in situ resource that will be make Timmins the world's largest nickel sulfide district. So it's going to be a pretty exciting 8 months here for us coming up.
Thank you. And for you, Trevor, what can people look forward to? And you're just on mute, just a heads up.
Thanks. Sorry about that. A few screens going on here. Really exciting times here at Frontier. We are nearing in the final months of definitive feasibility work on stage 1 mine and mill on the PAC Lithium project. We are running a process and very close to award on commencement of DFS Phase 2, and that's for a lithium refinery that we look to construct and build in Northern Ontario. We alluded earlier on the beginning steps here of the permitting process. We expect lots of activity with regards to that over the next 18 to 24 months. We've talked lots about government support for various R&D projects that are starting to take place here. All of this, really at a time when we've just recently brought in a strategic investor and joint venture partner with Mitsubishi Core out of Japan. They've come in with a tranche 1 investment, and that's really to progress and finalize the definitive feasibility work on the project. They've got the ability to come in for 25% of the project with a tranche 2. So we would expect to be into final investment decisions over the course of 2025 on the project. So lots of excitement and lots to roll out for shareholders and all stakeholders here in the coming months.
Thank you. And Jamie, for the last quarter of 2024 and beyond? Again, you're on mute too. My apologies.
Thanks. Don't apologize. My stupidity. Just to go back about Minister Pirie there about other than the tax revenue for the government, there's a lot of jobs that are created, and we all spend a lot of time in the north right now. A lot of the pulp and paper mills, or most of them, are shutting down, obviously because of the no need for newsprint anymore. And it's great. It's great to go to these communities and see full employment, and what we would be bringing to these communities, from the First Nations direct or indirect payments to the multiplier effect. I think during construction we're having 1,200 jobs. During operations we're 400 or 500 jobs. Multiplier effect is 3.5, 3.75, or 4 to 1, depending on what you look at. It's a lot of job creation that is needed for the north. And, I'm more than happy and to actually have those jobs, because these jobs are needed in the north. Some of these towns would run away or disappear if it wasn't for mining in the north. So mining is extremely important to the Northern Ontario economy. So, glad all of us on this project are supporting our local communities, which are needed of these mines to get going. Milestones for us. Actually, just one more thing. I just wanted to thank Minister Pirie, Premier Ford. He's been very supportive of this project. funny story. He gives out his phone number all the time. He actually got back to me once within 3 hours. From Minister Pirie to Minister Kanjan to Minister Pacini, Mr. Fideli, Minister Rickford. They're all there, and they're there to listen to us, not just us as the mining executives, but the communities. They go to all these openings, commercial productions, whatever it might be. They are supportive of the communities, and they're supportive of the mining business. So I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Pirie, and the rest of the people in the Ontario government. They're really making this a priority, and I like to just wanted to say thank you. I'm very appreciative of it. For us, mentioned to you before, we have 3 permits left in the province, fully permitted in the federal government. This project is a go. Once we get those projects and the final project financing, we're working with the federal government and the provincial government of hopefully getting that funding. So we'd be, as Trevor said, the financial investment decision ready to go once we get those permits. Got to do a little bit more detailed engineering. We're doing some optimization work. But not worried about the palladium price today or the copper price today. I know they're going higher. Hopeful they're going higher, just because of the natural supply demand deficits that are happening in these commodities. So it's going to be great for generation to be the next critical metal project getting built in Ontario. And stay tuned for when we're ready to make that financial investment decision. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jamie. And I should let Minister Pirie have some closing remarks here as well. I just want to remind anyone in the audience that this is being recorded. If you came late, we should have it up in the next couple of hours on our YouTube channel. So just look out for that. But thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Minister Pirie, if you have any closing remarks, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity and to participate in the panel. Obviously, a great deal of respect for the individuals, the individuals on the panel. I know them all extremely well, and they're driving their projects forward in the space. As I say, the critical minerals strategy was devised to move us off of the fossil fuels into the battery revolution. It's been enhanced by the U.S.'s view that, of course, this is more than just moving off of fossil fuels, and it's imperative from a national security point of view. And it's obviously very, very important from national security for Canada as well, because we really are joined at the hip in relation to our mutual efforts in that space. So I think, quite frankly, we've got a great strategy. I think we've set the table, each, and we're doing what we should be. But we didn't mention, we're doing what we have to do from an energy point of view. We recently announced the new transformer from Hydro One into the Gold Center transmission facility, and I think that's about $78 million. And the power in northeastern Ontario is associated with the Moose River Basin, the Albany River Basin. There's about 3,250 megawatts of potential there. There's 78 megawatts in the Jackfish project, and it's all designed to ensure that places like Jamie's and Trevor's have the power when required. So it is a fully integrated solution that we're looking at, including ensuring that we've got the trades that will provide the workers and the labor that's required to develop these projects. Anecdotally, by 2035, we're expecting requirement of 50,000 new jobs in this sector in Northern Ontario. So these are dynamic times. They're tremendously important times for Northern Ontario, and certainly the whole Canadian economy. There's an urgency to what we've got to do, and quite frankly, I think there's an obligation that we've got to get this done and get this done properly to ensure our future and actually to achieve our destiny as from Northern Ontario, and as a country, to achieve our destiny that in fact sits in front of us, because we're so well endowed with the resources, with the workforce, and that's well trained and skilled, and with the infrastructure that's there to support all aspects of our civilization. So incredibly important topic to be discussing today, and look nothing but incredible optimism for the future for this sector and the province as a whole.
Well said, sir. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and the great discussion here today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for your kind words. Thank you very much.